Hey everyone, this is Frodan with GameSpot at the BattleNet World Championships, joined by Alan Dabiri. Alan, can you introduce yourself to everyone watching?
Sure. My name's Alan Dabiri. I'm a lead software engineer on the StarCraft 2 team.
So, what is the lead software engineer day-to-day responsibilities?
I'm actually in charge of the online and user interface groups, so we got a great group of guys who are taking care of all the systems that interface both with BattleNet and then also all the user interface that the player interacts with while playing the game.
Great. We have lots of questions about that, but we'll start with that later. Let's first talk about even like the current state of StarCraft 2. How do you feel about all the cries of imbalance and everything? And is your involvement in terms of how the game develops in terms of the race and their powers, especially since everyone's crying out for infestors to be changed? What is your thoughts? What is Blizzard really doing to respond to that?
Sure. You know, with all of our games, we're always kind of monitoring what's going on in terms of balance. Honestly, at any given time, I think all the races, people have always claimed that they're in balance, and maybe that's a good thing when everyone thinks that all their races are in balance. But as usual, we're always looking at the feedback from both pro players, from our own internal stats. You know, we've got a balanced team as well that's looking at things. And so, I mean, if you remember back to when StarCraft launched, people were saying that Zerg was, unwinnable. You could never win. And things change in terms of the metagame, the way people play. But at the end of the day, we'll look at everything, and if something needs to be changed, we'll definitely address it.
I want to also ask another question. How much do you guys read of what the community says? Like, for example, StarCraft Reddit or even Tim Liquid, some of the other sites as well. Do you guys really pay attention to that things, or are you just really focusing on certain forums on BattleNet or even the pro player feedback? Because I know there's a forum there going on too.
You know, we have a great community team, and they monitor basically everything. And as far as the development team itself, and they also provide us with kind of a collected amount of feedback from all the different sources. The development team itself, we're also looking at a lot of that stuff. We read Reddit, we look at Team Liquid, for arcade maps. I read SC2 Mapster. So yeah, the BattleNet forums definitely. We're part of the community as well. So we read a lot of the stuff that the community is talking about.
That's really good to hear. So let's also dive a little bit deeper into, I guess, the state of StarCraft 2. As a lot of people are complaining specifically about Protoss versus Zerg. How do you feel like, especially with the incorporation of Heart of the Swarm, how is that dynamic going to change at all? Especially since what are some of the target areas that you guys are focusing on to make sure the game is more comfortable both for the casuals and for the competitive players?
I think that's the great thing about what we're doing is some of the units that we're adding, I think they do target more of the professional players where some of the elements involved, the micro that might be involved, maybe a new player, kind of a lower skilled player might not be able to actually make use of, but it's still a great unit. And then we have other units where really the casual can totally make use of it and be effective with it. So what we're trying to do right now with Heart of the Storm, we've got our beta going on right now, is really take that feedback from the players, from pro players and casuals alike, and kind of see what we need to adjust, what we need to address so that we can make the game, the best for all races.
Do you agree with the notion that things that remove the ability to micro, for example, locking down units so that they can't move, removing the ability for your opponent to respond, is that stuff that kind of hurts the game and you guys are addressing, or is it kind of like you're still waiting to see the final results of it?
I don't think it's just a flat. If you can't, move, it's bad for the game. I think some of those things have a place in the game. In addition, they cause micro in themselves, in that you want to avoid that, and so you need to actually control your army, make sure you don't have that big ball that then is going to get locked down. But with everything, we're always going to monitor, and we're going to kind of watch it and see how things go. If something actually doesn't really work out well, and honestly, in the beta, we've tried a lot of things, and we've made pretty massive changes. If it didn't work out, we got rid of it. We changed it.
Actually, that's a really important question that you brought, or point that you brought up too, because I know Dustin Browder posts on the forum that they experimented with even changing how the UI works, or sort of how unit path works. Like some of the movements, maybe they spread out a little bit more. Can you explain what you guys tested, your conclusions, maybe even some of the interesting results you may have had?
Yeah, basically it was just a form of adjusting the pathing a little bit, so that while they move, they wouldn't actually clump up as much, and so that the units would actually be spread out a little bit. But at the end of the day, the pathing in StarCraft 2 is different than the pathing in StarCraft 1, and honestly, I'll say that it's a little more refined, and so as a result, they're more efficient in the way that they move, and so they might actually be a little more clumped up. We didn't really feel at the time that change really benefited the game. We're still looking at it. But I think a lot of it, we just talked about micro and removing micro. I think a lot of this could be helped by the players actually doing micro on themselves to control those units and make sure that they don't get in those situations where they can get just their entire army wiped out.
That's understanding. Obviously, we'll see that with more testing. Actually, speaking of testing, Heart of the Swarm beta has been out for a while. There's been lots of changes. You know, people you're looking at the Oracle. It seems like every week. You guys have taken out the Warhound. Can you explain some of the thought processes of why you guys even took out the Warhound and why you guys are tweaking around units dynamics so much?
Well, at the end of the day, we want to make the best game we can, and so we're not, afraid to make major changes. If it's even the removal of a unit, it turned out the Warhound just didn't work out. We had some thoughts behind it, and it didn't actually work out. And so at the time, we thought that it was best to actually just remove the unit and focus on some of the other areas. We actually have a lot of great stuff that we've put in that kind of makes up for it, in my opinion. And so I think in terms of the constant changes that we're doing, that's really what the beta's for, and that's why we love getting that beta out early. And so some people, they may not be used to that, where we're making such drastic changes, but I think this is a really cool connection we have with the community where we can basically show them the development process, and we can show them and give them the opportunity to actually partake in that and really be a part of that, and it helps us. It lets us really make the best game we can.
It's true. The community did have a big outcry against the Warhounds, and you guys respond immediately. I also want to ask maybe about the redesign of a couple of old units. Maybe people are explaining that maybe Void Rays, Hydralisks maybe need to be reevaluated at its core, even the carrier itself. Do you guys have any plans to even hit the older units in Wings of Liberty for Heart of the Swarm?
Yeah, definitely. They mainly started focusing on the Heart of the Swarm units first. We want to make sure those were in a good state. But everything is on the table in terms of looking at it. We've already made some changes, like you mentioned the Hydralisk, like we do have an upgrade for speed. But beyond that, there's actually, anything is fair game, and we're willing to make those changes if they're necessary.
Some of the other changes in Heart of the Swarm, like for example, this is something that you directly work with, the UI, the interface. What are you guys also doing to maybe even add to that? Because we were talking with Bob Colicchio from Blizzard, and he was saying more features are on the way. Can we expect maybe more tournament portals directly, like even embedded in the stream? What are you guys also having under the wraps that you can tell us?
So the stuff that we've shown so far is like our groups and clans system. We're also talking about the multiplayer replay viewing, which I think is a really awesome feature that a lot of people have been asking for. One thing we haven't talked about a bunch, we've mentioned it, but tied to that multiplayer replay viewing is also the ability to resume from replay. So one, it will help out esports scenarios where maybe a computer crashes or it loses power or the keyboard goes out. Now they can resume that game. But another thing that actually gets me a little more excited is the fact that you can actually play from a point in the replay. So now if you just got done with a game and with your friend and you're talking smack with them about how I would have beat you if I'd done this or that, now you can actually go back in the replay and do this or that and prove it to him and show that off. And so we've also got some great improvements with another kind of progression system with this XP racial leveling system, where it'll give more casual players the ability to really keep on gaining and earning rewards, where maybe the latter is more something where you want to try to show off if you're playing at a high level. This is more that you're actually just playing and you're doing various things that are good in the game, and it promotes good gameplay as well.
I actually have had the chance to toy around the level XP system. Really cool. But is there anything that you guys even plan to unveil more than just portraits? Some people are saying portraits and decals, maybe they're kind of cool. Maybe have a portrait of their favorite pro gamer. Maybe they have like a decal of a team they really like. Is that also incorporation in some of the plans?
Yeah, definitely. Actually, we're talking about it right now. We're working on stuff right now. And we think we're going to include something beyond portraits and decals.
All right, guys, that makes me really excited as a player. Also, I wanted to talk about some of the UI that's also changing directly with matchmaking. You guys are changing a lot of how each race is even selected, especially with random being kind of left out there. Do you guys ever plan on taking out random, or you guys even like it? Because some people are really complaining about it all the time.
Taking out random as a race option?
Or no, not necessarily. It's kind of like if they do, they reveal what race that they're playing at the beginning of the loading screen. Sorry, I didn't clarify enough.
No, I mean, I think it's still an option that's viable, and it's something that's cool. If you can play random and you can play at a high level, that's great. I personally, I know there's been some discussion on this in the past. I personally think that giving that secrecy as to what actually your race was is the perk of playing random. If you're that good that you can do any race, then I think that's a great element to it. But we're always open to discussing those kind of things. But as of right now, we're not changing anything with random. So.
I guess the last question about Heart of the Swarm that I want to ask is, what are some of the challenges that you guys are experiencing now that you've opened up, I guess, a new aspect of the interface that you've never really sure that you were going to encounter? Is there any kind of current problems that you guys are trying to address in Heart of the Swarm that you guys are developing?
So as far as the interface, actually, I think we've made some huge improvements. And the most recent update we just made to the beta, we actually drastically changed the way the user interface looks and you interact with it. So a lot of those challenges we had in our 1.5 patch or previously in Wings of Liberty, I think we've actually kind of overcome a lot of those. So I think we're in a great place. There's always more to do. There's more stuff. We have a list a mile long of things we'd like to do, and we'll just keep trucking on that and keep improving it.
If I may ask, what's on the top of that list? Maybe the top 2 items currently, for at least in terms of your own personal priorities.
So personally, we've talked about a lot of stuff with spectating, viewing games, things that can help esports. There's a lot of things on the list. I don't want to reveal anything right now, but there's a lot of things that we'd like to do.
I understand. Let's talk a little bit more about the UI then in itself. Can you explain maybe to some people why is it take so long to kind of redesign BattleNet, especially for 2.0? Everyone makes a joke it's BattleNet 0.2, right? Because everyone says, how is it that we can watch all these things back, or we had all these features back in an old BattleNet? Can you explain maybe why it takes a long time to have some of these changes, especially for cross-server play, multiple people watching a replay? Explain the process to Pete.
So, I mean, basically, we've done a lot more in StarCraft 2 that sometimes I think people, when they look back, there's a bit of nostalgia where they don't realize actually what existed back then versus what we have right now. Some of these things like multiplayer replay viewing, like we actually didn't even have in War 3. We had it in Brood War, but it was actually added later on. So it's basically a matter of us picking and choosing the things that are the highest priority for us at the time. It was always something that we'd like to get in the game, but at the same time, we've only got so much time, we've only got so many resources, and so it takes a while. In addition to that, I'll say that in terms of when you talk about how long it takes us to do things, it's a bit of a problem of where we really want to make sure things are right, and so as a result, we spend a little more time working on those things.
Absolutely understand. And with that, I'm pretty sure we're done with the UI questions. The last thing I want to ask is, who is your favorite pro player?
So I'll tell you who I would love to have win this tournament, but I mean, I love Boxer from he's kind of not playing lately, but for this tournament right now, I would love to see Rain win as far as Korean side, and then Stefano is my favorite from the foreigners. So.
Actually, I want to tag on a bonus question. What's been your favorite moment in 2012 esports-wise with StarCraft 2?
Well, I think we're going to find out at the finals of this one. Maybe this ends up being it.
Absolutely, I can't wait. In fact, that's another reason for you guys to keep watching. Thank you so much, Alan, for your time. And if you guys want more from GameSpot, go to GameSpot.com/esports.